All right, everybody, it's Mr. Tobin. This is a review of yesterday's Articles of Confederation worksheet. So, if you were struggling a little bit, hopefully this will help clear things up. And if you felt pretty good about what you were doing on that assignment, hopefully this is just a good way to check and make sure that you're ready for the next step in our work. All right, so just to kind of review a couple of things on the Articles of Confederation, one of the articles that you were looking at was the fact that laws needed to be approved by 9 of the 13 states in order to be passed, not just a majority. So 7 out of 13 will be a typical simple majority. This required that 9 states would have to agree. So that makes sure that a large proportion of the states would agree with laws, and you would hopefully only get really good ideas that would be passed by Congress. It also makes sure that most of the states agree with something. There isn't much disagreement or controversy. But the problem is that it's going to be really difficult to get 9 out of 13 states to agree on anything, so not many laws would probably be passed. Next, the legislative branch not being able to tax the citizens makes a lot of sense. The purpose there, the colonists under British rule had been really frustrated by taxes, so it kind of makes sense that they would want to back off in their own government now and not want to tax the people. But hypothesizing a problem, governments that can't tax their people aren't really going to have the income that they need to get anything else done. And so it's going to really cripple their ability to accomplish anything. And then finally, any amendments or changes to the articles themselves would require the approval of all 13 states. And that makes sense. And a lot of you kind of said this yesterday that if you leave 1 or 2 states out, then they might be really frustrated. They might want to leave. So this is ensuring that everybody agrees with the decisions that are being made to change the government itself. But hypothesizing a problem, it's very unlikely that you would ever be able to get all 13 states to agree. And in fact, that's what happened. No amendments were ever actually made to the Articles of Confederation until they were completely abandoned. So, those are some reasons why those things were included and some potential problems with them. Then on the next page for contextualizing sources, um, in hindsight, us today looking back, the Articles of Confederation seem totally crazy and maybe even idiotic, but at the time they actually made a lot of sense. So here's some ways that you could think about the historical context to understand why the articles seemed like a good idea. The Articles of Confederation seemed like a good form of government to the early Americans because of the recent experience the colonists had had under British rule. Socially, the colonists were not given much liberty under the British government, so allowing states to have power and freedom from a central government seemed like an improvement. Politically, the colonists believed that the strong central leadership of King George III led to tyrannical rule, so a weak government would avoid such abuses of power. And economically, taxes were a constant source of frustration for the colonists. Limiting the government's ability to tax its people made perfect sense to the early Americans of the 1780s. Overall, though we now know that the Articles of Confederation were simply too weak to organize and run an effective government, they in many ways made sense based on the recent experience of the Americans who had rebelled against the British monarchy of King George III. So there you go. There's the Articles of Confederation. Hopefully this is helpful and will lead you to understand why the Articles were abandoned and a new constitution was created. Thanks.